Hey everyone! So, it's that time of the year again, and among many news, some reflections, a little bit of rumors, and loads of I hope so's, we're going to try and predict what will happen with Godot in 2021. This video will be split in three major parts. The first one will be what I think that will happen for sure. And for sure means anything greater than 95% of chance of actually happening, okay? The second major part will be things I think will probably happen, but don't shoot the messenger if they don't. Stuff in this category, I believe are anywhere from 30% to 95% of chance of actually happening. And finally, the third major part will cover things I wish would happen, but let's be real, they probably won't. Any of them I believe have less than 1% of chance of happening, but hey, you never know. I'll provide timestamps in the description down below for all major parts and all predictions inside it. With that being said, let's begin. So, the first thing that I believe is a given that's going to happen is that Godot 4.0 is going to be released. I come to this URL almost every day and I check this percentage like crazy. It's not the most healthy habit, but I mean, there are many ones far worse than that. And I can tell you that I've been following that since it was like 52%, and by my rough estimate, it grows like 1% every week or so. So if it keeps that momentum, it's going to take like 33 weeks to reach 100%, and 33 weeks from now is like middle of 2021. But I think it doesn't need quite to reach 100% to be released, because I believe, and you might correct me if I'm wrong, that 3.2 wasn't at 100% when it was released. So also, it's not quite linear. I mean, at the same time that it gets harder and harder, it also brings more and more people each and every day. So I don't know, I guess I firmly believe in my heart of hearts that it's going to release around April next year. So don't take my word for it, but I believe so. The second thing that I firmly believe that is coming for Godot next year is that 3D is going to become competitive with Unity and Unreal. In this URL over here, you can see the roadmap, the public roadmap for Godot for the near future. I mean, near like 1 year or so. And you can see that everything that's coming to 3D is like half of the list compared to everything else. And honestly, I haven't quite messed with 3D in Godot yet, but from everything I saw over Games from Scratch and many others, it seems to me that 3D right now is okay, you can make stuff with it, but it's kind of cumbersome and lacks lots of stuff that more mature engines like Unity have already. So I believe that's changing next year, and of course I believe that's changing with the Godot 4.0 release, and it's going to be a game changer. I mean, pun not intended. The third thing I believe that's going to happen for sure next year, and this one's honestly the most uncertain of the certain things that I've listed, is that at least one big game is going to be released made with Godot. And I mean, it's huge for an engine to have a great hit released with it. From a technical point of view, it shouldn't make a difference, but you know how people go and how human psychology is. And having a hit made with Godot will make a huge difference for its popularity. And I mean, it's just great, and I'm cheering for every one of them that's making those games that you're seeing right now. And I can't wait, because I truly believe that at least one of them is going to release next year, making a huge impact on Godot's popularity overall. Finally, the fourth and last thing that I believe is going to happen next year is that Godot is going to have its documentation reworked. And for those among us that have worked with software before, I already think that Godot's documentation is one of the best. I know that I worked with a lot of APIs before that had horrible documentations, and Godot for me is already pretty good, but I mean, it's news for everyone that they hired Nathan of GDQuest to work on the manual, like last month or so. It was just announced this month. And also GDQuest itself announced that. And I think at the rate that things are going, it's probably going to happen next year. Not so sure, though, if it's going to happen in the first half of the year. I think it's something where the results are going to show more over the second half of the year. But if it can get even better than that, no complaints from me. The only complaint that I have, of course, is that honestly half or so of the documentation lacks some counterpart of code in C#. You know what I'm talking about if you have tried to do something in C# before and didn't find an example how to do that in C# over Godot documentation. And I firmly believe that is changing over the next year, and I'm very happy for that. Now we arrive at part 2 of this video where I will be talking about things that I believe that might happen, but they are not so surely going to happen as the things that I said in the last part. The first one of them is that I believe that the current state of tile sets and tile maps is going to change, mostly because of this video from Emilio, where Gil himself, someone officially hired to work on Godot, commented, GDQuest commented, and Game Endeavor commented. Like 3 big players in the Godot community commented, like agreeing with him. And as you can tell by seeing the video, which I'll also link in the description down below, it's not like the functionality of tile sets nowadays is bad, it's not the case. But I mean, it could benefit from some reworking. And Emilio goes in much better detail than I ever could over this video if you are interested in that. And I have my hopes that it can be changed over the next year. I don't know if in the 4.0 release itself, but I guess that like over 4.1, 4.2, it might be the major selling point. And I mean, I like it, and I think it has a quite reasonable chance to actually happen next year. The next thing that I believe might happen, and this is a quite odd one because it isn't quite an end result for us users, but I think it's something nice to have, is that I think Godot will reach like $30,000 per month over its Patreon over next year. I know it's a lot because it's like double the current amount and a little bit more. At the time of this recording, like end of September 2020, it's almost close to 14,000. But I think that by looking at its growth over the months over here at Graphitron, if you look like to the last year or so, or even all of Godot history in Patreon, you can see that it has been growing a lot, of course, but since May or so, April or so, it's been growing at a faster rate. So I don't know, it might be wishful thinking. Maybe I should put that in the last section of this video, but I don't think it's too far-fetched to believe that it might reach $30,000 per month next year. And I mean, it's going to be great for everyone because I believe that the more it gets per month, the faster and better quality engine and assets we receive. So I don't know, I honestly think it's something that's going to happen. The next thing that I believe that might happen next year is that when they announced back in August that new hires were going to be announced, someone, I mean myself, asked them, when you say the website will be the focus of one of those new hires, does it include the assets library? It's also a bit dated today, but hey, congratulations. And if you don't know, Godot has an asset library, but I mean, just take a look at it right now. I know there are quality assets over here and I'm very grateful for them, but the UI doesn't help. It looks like something that was made back in 2005. And I mean, even by that standards, that's not the most intuitive and or beautiful UI you have ever seen. So, I mean, it needs some reworking right now. And when I asked them about that, they replied to me, besides work on the doc system, which requires a lot of improvements, website work includes a proper community page, community map, a proper showcase, the old one was a mess, had to be taken down. That includes published games, a proper unified funding page, asset library and other stuff too. We also want to create professional networks so you can put job offers as well as offer service. Amazing. And honestly, I think it's amazing. I don't know if that is going to happen next year because, I mean, it's not simply an UI problem as I might have seen it. It's more like it lacks incentives right now because I know that Godot is free, but having a 100% free asset library kind of limits it to people that, well, just want to make some money with that, and there's no problem with that. But just to rely on people making free assets over here is like limiting its potential. So it's not simply an UI problem, but I believe, I'm an optimist, that over the course of the next year, that's going to change. But then again, I think something that we're going only to see the results over the second half of next year, not on the first half. On the first half, however, I think that we're going to see like things more related to the UI and UX experience over here, not so to the business model of asset library as it touches on more delicate subjects. The next item that I believe is going to happen next year is that, still related to the asset library, is that I believe that some paid assets are going to be a reality over here. It's not something that's simply wishful thinking though. I believe that in this community poll that they released like on July this year, right now I can't see this question exactly, but I believe or that it was here or it was in some other poll that I can't seem to find, that they asked if there was going to be any problem for you if there were paid assets. And I mean, like a very diverse community as Godot is, the answers were diverse, but I think they are at least considering it. When you come to the documentation, you can see that they have one question touching this. Can paid assets be uploaded to the asset library? And the current answer is not the official one, though in the future that might be other asset libraries which allow it. That said, you're allowed to monetize and sell Godot assets outside the asset library, but in the future that might be other asset libraries which allow it. Makes me think that at least in a different domain or area over here, there might be paid assets, and for me, that might make Godot grow even more than it's growing right now, because just look at the juggernaut that Unity as a store is today. It's almost one solo business by itself. And I really hope that something like that's come to Godot next year, but the more I think about it, the more I think it's something that belongs to 2022 or even later. But one can hope. Now we are entering my favorite part of this video, because everything here is going to be so far-fetched that's just fun. But, I mean, one can dream, am I right? The first one is that I really wish for C# to take more love on the Godot community that it's taking right now. You can see over here that it was back in July that they made this poll, and one of the questions was, which language do you use in Godot mostly? Let me just find it. Over here, which is your most used programming language? And you can see that C# only took like 15.3% of this poll, but I guess that somewhere I read them saying that like 20% of their base uses C#. In fact, because one thing is to answer a poll, and another thing that I think is stronger is to actually use it. So taking like 20% of the space right now isn't much, but I mean, I guess I'm thankful, because it could take like only 1% or less, like some others. But since I prefer C# much more than JavaScript, and I know some of you are the contrary, I don't advocate for any language to be eradicated, and I know there are pros and cons to every language, but since I like C#, I just hope it grows. And my wishful thinking here is that it grows to 50% next year. But I know it's not going to happen. Being realistic, one can suppose that it might reach like 25% to 30% next year, which would be already a huge step for my quote-unquote team. Next on the list is something that, like the milestone back in GitHub that I check almost every day, I'm also guilty of checking more than I should, is Godot's popularity over Google Trends over here. What do? Sometimes a week I come over here and set it to worldwide, set it to past 5 years, Godot game engine, not search term, Unity game engine, not search term as well, and compare both of them. You can see that back in 2015, Unity was like 86 times more popular than Godot. It's been quite stable over the years. You can see that something about the holidays make people less prone to work with game dev. Well, I guess people are just... I suppose it's because mostly of the people interested in game development are younger, and they are usually in school and or college. And I mean, who wants to work in the holidays? But with that being said, you can see that right now, over the end of September of 2020, Unity is only like 13 times more popular than Godot. It's still a lot. It's like 2 orders of magnitude more popular, but I mean, it was almost 4 orders of magnitude more popular back then. So it's extremely far-fetched. It's the most impossible of anything in my list. And I mean, my list is already very far-fetched right now. But being realistic, I think that over the course of the next year, we're going to see Godot cover that gap a little bit more. I can see something like Unity being with 70 and Godot with 10, like Unity being only like 5 to 10 times more popular than Godot, which is already very huge, because you know, Unity has just gone to IPO. It's a multi-billion company, so being 10 times smaller than Unity is already very big. And I think Godot can reach that, because when you take Unity out of the picture over here, and you only compare Godot to itself, you can see that it's been growing a little bit better than linearly over the years. So I have high hopes for the future. The penultimate item on my list is that Godot might get another epic or epic mega grant, pun intended. I know it's quite unlikely to get an epic with capital E again, because, I mean, it would be like 2 epic mega grants in a row, but it's not impossible. And since recently, most of the interest in the documentation, I'm trying to find the exact link over here, came from one specific donation of $10,000, and it might have seemed impossible. One can dream that something like that, or even much, much better, might come towards Godot next year, and it would be huge, it would be amazing, it would be a dream coming true. But there's no evidence for that, and that's really just pure wishful thinking. The last item on my list is that I believe that over the course of the next year, console support in Godot is going to get better. And by that I mean that I think that a better export experience for consoles is going to happen, but I don't have high hopes for that, mostly because of the reasons that they list over here, that it's not just make a game and export it to consoles. It takes some cash and lots of bureaucracy to do that. And they even point you to some third-party support that you can go and have some help with if you really want to export your game to PS4 or Switch. But, I mean, back to the Godot community poll that they did a few months ago, I don't know if I dreamt about it, but I can swear to you that they asked some questions about paid assets over here, and they also asked some questions about making the process to releasing for game consoles better, but I look over here and I can't find it. I don't know if I dreamt about it. If I'm missing something, please comment down below if you know the poll that I'm talking about. But this poll was what gave me hope that it might be on their roadmap, although not the fastest one, because it's something that highly depends on external factors to Godot community. And I mean, it's not really a huge priority because, as they said themselves, you can always ask for third-party help that is specialized in that. And for most of us, just releasing Steam or Android and or iOS is already a huge victory. But it might happen. I just don't really think it's going to happen next year, more like 2022 or so. And that's it, guys. That's the list of things that I believe that are going to happen to Godot in 2021. There are 12 items, 4 of them that I strongly believe that are going to happen, 4 of them that I think that might and or might not happen, and 4 of them that are really wishful thinking. But what do you think? Do you think something else might happen? Do you think that something that I said over here is never going to happen? Do you want C# to be extinguished? Don't wish for that. It's bad for the community. But do you think this proportion right now is good? What do you think? Please leave a comment down below on what you think. If I've missed something, please let me know. If you liked this kind of video, give it a big like down below. It was quite the work to make this video happen. If you like videos about Godot, Godot C#, game dev in general, and isn't normally covered in regular game dev channels, please subscribe, because this channel is all about it. It's all about covering things that aren't usually covered in game dev channels, going beyond game dev. And that's it for now. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!